Is keynote speaking dead? Is it over for professional keynote speakers? That's what I'm going to be talking about today. Hey there, it's James Taylor here, keynote speaker on creativity, innovation, and artificial intelligence, and the founder of SpeakersU. The other day I was having a conversation with a publicist in America, and we were talking about what we did in our respective jobs and our roles. And I said, I'm a keynote speaker, I speak on creativity, innovation, AI. And he said, oh, keynote speaking is dead. Keynote speaking is over. There's no work for keynote speaking. In fact, he said he doesn't call it keynote speaking anymore. He calls it FREENOTE speaking, because keynote speakers can't get paid to speak. And I listened to him for a little while, and then I kind of laughed to myself, because what we are seeing from my own speaking business, the keynote speakers I work with and I coach here at SpeakersU, as well as all the bureaus I speak to, is we're seeing an actual boom now in keynote speaking, virtual and gradually now back into in-person and into hybrid of these. But it's not equal. It's not being equally spread, all this love just now for keynote speakers. Now, there are some keynote speakers from the old world, the kind of pre-pandemic side, let's say, that have really, really struggled. And some of them have had to just go from keynote speaking to FREENOTE speaking. They're struggling to get paid to speak. And there's a couple of things I tend to notice about them. First of all, there's a number of them who are, their heart wasn't in it towards the end there. They maybe been speaking for a long time. They'd maybe fallen out of love with their topic, their speech. Maybe they had a signature keynote. They just kind of fallen out of love with it. The material was a little bit old, a little bit dated. They were still talking about Blockbuster. And for them, many of them have just decided to exit the field and move on from speaking. Or some of them have just said, listen, I can't get paid to speak, but I still enjoy speaking. I enjoy that. But I'm going to be a FREENOTE speaker, and I'll maybe upsell people. I'll sell from the stage, as it's sometimes called. So they might have a coaching program or some other product or service that they sell from the stage, but they're not really getting paid to speak anymore. So that's one grouping. And I think that the pandemic has just accelerated that. The other grouping that I've seen have really struggled during this time and have probably moved from keynoters to FREENOTers is people that just give the same speech every single time. And I was having a conversation with a bureau the other day, and they were telling me the story about previously one of their busiest speakers, speaking over like 100 dates a year, or keynotes a year, and they just can't get them arrested now. They're just not getting booked. And part of the problem is that speaker just gave the same speech every single time. Maybe changed the logo on the PowerPoint slides that they did, but that was about it really. Now, that may have been fine. It wasn't necessarily right, but it might have been workable in the old world, pre-pandemic world. But now, you're not giving that speech in front of 50 people, 100 people in a small room, in a conference center. Now, every time you speak, you're speaking usually on video, and that video can be seen, can be shared. You might be doing pre-record, in which case it gets shared lots of time. Even you might have the best contract in the world and don't want it to be shared, but over time, that content's going to be seen. In fact, if you're a good speaker, then you don't want it to be kept. You want it to be seen by more people, obviously with the right stipulations involved. So those speakers who just gave the same speech over and over again, when those videos now are getting shared of that virtual presentation, it's killing their keynote, because every speech is exactly the same. They're not inventing, not do like a speaker like I would do, which I'm tailor-making, maybe not the entire speech, but a large percentage of the speech is tailor-made for that client. So for many of those speakers who are given the same speech, their speeches have now been seen. People, unless it's a celebrity speaker, more well-known speaker, they're not getting the same number of bookings. And the third type of speaker I'm seeing that's had to move from being a keynote speaker, you might class them to a FREENOTE speaker, they're just struggling to get paid now to speak, are those speakers who they might have been very strong in terms of doing the side rooms at conference. but they're not really the main stage of what we call the keynote speaker. They might call themselves keynote speakers, but they weren't really keynote speakers. They weren't main stage necessarily speakers. And I'm talking here about when we used to go on physical stages. So they might be very, very good, maybe as trainers, as facilitators, as workshop leaders, and they would run in those side rooms, but they're not necessarily keynote speakers. Now, I'm a big fan of great trainers, great workshop leaders, great facilitators, because there's an art and a craft to doing that really well. And the good ones, what they've realized is, hey, there's this massive market now. We're going online and virtual. I can give all these workshops, these trainings, facilitate all these things now virtually, and they're thriving. Their business is booming because now they can do multiple ones in a day if they want. They can be doing multiple time zones. They're just, it's boundless opportunities for them. And for many of them, they're not going to be coming back to doing so many in-person types of events. They will do some, but a lot of them are just going to stay virtually because many companies have got very, very comfortable delivering the workshop, training, and some of the facilitation side online. If you're organizing a large conference now, or any type of conference for a company, and you're looking at the cost of doing this and all the challenges you have now, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to actually have my keynote speaker, have that stage, but some of those side stages, those side rooms, actually, we're going to deliver those primarily virtually. Or they might take part as a series now as well. So those speakers are going to stay in doing that. Now, once again, I have to say all this because I have a huge amount of love for workshop leaders, top trainers, because the ones that are really great, they're having a ball. They're having a blast just now moving into virtual because it's opened up their world. But many of those workshop leaders are not going to get booked as keynote speakers anymore because it's a different craft. It's a different type of thing. And here's the other interesting thing. As we move into hopefully a post-pandemic world, you're going to be moving into this hybrid space. And this is going to require those keynote speakers to not only understand delivering in person on a stage, for example, but how to deliver virtually, how to deliver in a hybrid or high flex version of these as well. And so the role of the keynote speaker, I think, has become even more valued because when people do come back together, especially as in-person events again, you're going to really want to ensure that you have thought leaders on that stage, not just the same speech that's being delivered time and time again. So if I was you, if you're worried about maybe getting relegated into that freenoting, you are a keynote speaker, you know that your place is to be on that stage, delivering that keynote, inspiring, educating, entertaining on that stage, then there's a couple of things that you want to ensure that you're doing. First of all, make sure that your thought leadership is right up there. Continually be learning. I was having a conversation the other day with a very, very successful speaker that speaks on innovation. And he is really humble about always learning, always reading, always researching, always asking questions, always doing interviews, always doing all those pre-event calls to understand the client, the challenges, and what's going on in his industry. He's going to be absolutely fine because he's using that and he's developing his own thought leadership. The other thing I would say is if you're wanting to ensure that you can be that keynote speaker side, you need to start investing in your skills to be doing that. When we start going back to in-person and doing those, it's going to be in a different place because now we're going to be talking about hybrid keynoting. So you need to have a couple of different skills, a couple of different things in your toolkit. If you go to SpeakersU.com, we share some of the latest training, most up-to-date training on topics like that. So today is an amazing time to be a keynote speaker if you are committed to your craft and your art as a keynote speaker. Yes, there'll be lots of freenoting from now, but if you're a true keynote speaker and you have that thought leadership, you have that skills, you have that message that you want to share in the world, you can take that stage, whether it's virtual or in person. It's never been a better time to be a keynote speaker.